Hey, I'd like to introduce Amanda Challans, who's just completed a solo-handed row from Stockholm to Turku, just outside Turku. And we followed her a little bit on her trip across with a few videos that you've already seen posted through our social media. And now we have her back, and we'd love to ask you a little bit about what the trip was like.
Sure.
Yeah. So we've already shared a video about what it was like encountering the effect of cruise ship wake as you were approaching Finland.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
yeah.
And they drive a lot faster when they get to Finland as well, so the wake gets even bigger. And I was just rowing along at that point, and I just stopped and felt a bit sad just watching the effects of the cruise ship. So did a little video just to kind of share my thoughts on them.
Yeah. And that's, though I was actually wanting to ask you about what were some of your highlights?
So
what were some of
many.
the
Where
key
to
things of seeing the
start?
Baltic?
Wow, it was really nice seeing it from a slow kind of method and low down, like going in a rowing boat. You go quite slowly and you're very much immersed in the sea, the water, in nature, and very much amongst the islands. It was very different coming back on the ferry and just seeing a bird's eye view looking down on it versus being completely submersed in it. And stopping off on these islands as I go. And just sometimes I would find a completely uninhabited island. In fact, a lot of the time I would find that, and it just felt like I was something very different. It was just like so owned by nature and so immersed in all these creatures, and there sometimes be eagles or woodpeckers and lots of birds flying around, lots of seabirds. The seals would follow the boat because I think they were really curious by the rowing boat. It must look strange from underwater to a seal, like, what's this thing coming along? And they'd come up and they'd look and they'd follow me. And so yeah, there were some bits where it just felt like I was the foreigner and this was like a place that was completely owned by nature and the creatures and the birds and the animals. And I think I really, really liked that, and really being submersed in that for a long time was really, really nice.
Yeah. I know as well you had some touch and go moments.
Yeah.
Another run-in maybe with the cruise ship and some issues with weather.
Yes.
Any particular one of those stories that you want to share?
I think the last 2 hours of the whole trip were probably like quite dramatic actually. I had this weather front that I'd been watching for 4 days finally came over on the last day that I was rowing, and I'd been watching and going, when's it going to come, and looking at it thinking, well actually I kind of need to go along this way and then I need to go up that way, and the wind's kind of blowing, it's kind of helping me do that. It should be okay, but it's quite strong winds, so if it's not in the direction it's meant to be, then it's going to be more difficult. So I went for it and I was keeping an eye on it, checking the weather every hour and checking what it was doing, and I had twice that day the weather just flipped like 180 degrees within a second, and I think I'd seen it a few times, like the weather changing really suddenly out in the Baltic, but that day, and particularly the last few hours, I really saw how quickly it can spin and can change, and was just reacting to that and trying to have contingency plans a little bit as well. And the last sort of hour, I'd sort of sprinted across this massive, massive shipping lane because I wanted to get across it fast. It takes me about 15 minutes to sprint across the shipping lane. That's how big and wide they are, especially coming into Turku. There's lots of ships going, and I'd looked on the radar, the AIS system, which identifies what ships are coming, and I could look as far as I could see and go, right, I've got a window, I can make it across, but it's upwind, so I was just going flat out upwind. Finally got across the shipping lane, went a little bit further so I didn't get blown back into it, and then the wind shifted like that, and it's suddenly then blowing me into the rocks on the other side. And so I was like, I was just stopping for some food, going, oh, that was tough, now I need to eat. No time to eat, and sprinted off again, trying to get back off the rocks. And at that point it got so windy, and rather the wind coming kind of like this, it was coming really low, and it was almost coming under the boat, the back of the boat sort of shaped like this, and then kind of goes down like in that sort of shape to have a bit of a keel. And the wind was like catching under here, and it was trying to flip the boat, so when it was on top of the wave, that corner of the boat was exposed, and it was a bit like a sail, and it was trying to flip it. So I was rowing along, and it was just like my weight sort of right over one side of the boat, and kind of leaning over the rigger and rowing really fast at the same time to try and keep the boat upright and sort of get off the rocks. So that was kind of probably the most sort of dramatic weather that I rode in, but it was nice that it was at that point because I knew that it was so close to the end, like less than an hour from the end, that I could get safety cover if I needed it, and had people on call if I got into trouble. So I felt really safe kind of doing what I could in that situation, and really enjoyed actually just jumping over the waves. And it was getting really choppy. I was going to the wind, and the boat would pick up and then land, and some of the waves I would go over and my bum would come out my seat and then land again. Like, it felt a bit like a roller coaster. And so yeah, it was definitely harder weather, but kind of playful to row in as well.
It was nice to have you back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In one piece and safe and dry. Yeah.
So you came back with, was it Tallinn ferries?
Yeah, Tallinn.
Yeah.
And I wrote both to Tallinn and Viking Line to see if I could walk on, but with a rowing boat, which is quite unusual. And without a car, but with a rowing boat on a little tiny couple of wheels. So yeah, I tried a few emails, a few calls, and Tallinn Line got back to me and helped me out. And they were really helpful, actually. They went out of their way to make sure that I could get on, I could go through the Cardet. There's a bit of faff getting on the ferry when they were like, what is this boat that showed up? And miscommunications about someone saying it was a kayak, someone saying it was a big boat, that kind of thing. And then they sorted it out, like the people in the bridge knew about it, and on I went, and they were great. After seeing like the effects of the cruises going across and speaking to the locals on the islands, I did feel a pang of guilt that, oh wait, I've already booked on, before I knew this, I've booked on a ferry to come back, and I'm one of those people that's on the ferries, and it's just damaging the environment and the landscape around the archipelago islands. So I, while I was there, I thought, well, I'm going to see if I can have a chat to the captain and the people in the bridge and just sort of get their views on it as well, and see the other side of the story. I've only spoken to one side of this at the moment, so I wanted to get a kind of full picture and a full view. I was also keen to know what they're doing from an environmental point of view, whether the ferries I wanted to know what their attitude towards it was. I was thinking, I wonder if I go up there and they'll be like, environment, whatever, or whether they really care. And I was just really interested to know, like, what are the individuals who work in that space, like, what do they feel, what do they care about? And actually they were asking me before I was asking them about environmental issues, and I was like, this is very cool. So the captain asked me if I'd seen much plastic in the water as I rode across, and I was like, no, I saw 2 pieces of plastic the whole trip, and one of them might be in a fishing ball related thing, so that might not count, but and then a water bottle on a beach which I picked up and binned at the next place that I stopped. But out of all the places I've been in terms of kind of sailing, rowing, being offshore, the amount of plastic I've seen in the water, like kind of in the sea and in inland waterways, is just huge. It's humongous. But in the Baltic it was totally different, so that was really cool. And the people working on this cruise ship, the captain, the first mate I was talking to, they were really glad about that as well. I'm really, really impressed that I'd seen no plastic. So yeah, they really cared about the plastic pollution issue. They also really cared about water quality, and they were talking about that and saying there was big problems with it, particularly from Poland side and from some of the other countries. And having so many countries that border the Baltic, you guys must have this issue. It's really hard to like kind of see what people are doing differently, and if you need everyone to collaborate. So they were really kind of up to speed on that and had a really good sense of that sort of issue. They also talked about what they're doing to be more sustainable. So they're looking at getting batteries on board the boat.
Okay.
So they can do a mix of kind of liquid petroleum gas and electric.
Oh, for propulsion?
Yeah, so like, so that was really good. They're experimenting with different ideas. I think it's very, very early days yet, but the captain was saying kind of his view is that anyone who's not looking at sustainability in any company is just not going to survive if they're not looking from that point of view. So it's really important. So I thought it was really good that he had lots to talk about on that. How much of it is a reality or is going to become a reality, I don't know. It sounded like very far off at the moment, but at least that's like progress in the right direction, I guess. I talked a little bit about the wake from the ships, and what their view is on kind of, said like, here's some stories and anecdotes from people I'd spoken to on the islands, one of whom used to be working on the cruise ships as well, but also lives on the island. So he's in a position where he drives the cruise ships and it's affecting his fishing as well. So he's kind of coming from both points of view. They didn't have a huge amount to say about the wake, apart from the speed limits are really different in Finland and in Sweden. So, which is why a lot of these stories about the wake being a huge problem are coming from the Finland side. So the speed limit's a lot faster in there, which means it's a much bigger problem. Like the wake from these boats are just swamping those shores. So it's good to speak to them, and it's good to have that debate. We had some interesting conversations. It was good.
Yeah. If there was anything I wondered you could say maybe to sum up the week in a sentence. It was 10 days. It was 10 days rowing.
10 days of rowing.
10 days of rowing.
Yeah.
That's a lot of rowing.
Yeah. It's good to be like rowing. Yeah. Can I use more than one word?
Use more than one word, yeah.
Great. I think like the first word that came to mind was magical. It was really, really magical, just being like submersed in nature and rowing all day, and then arriving on these amazing islands, and a different amazing island each night, not knowing what I was going to find. And the second thing that kind of came up for me was sort of calmness. I felt this amazing, just like, it's very, very zen out there. Even when it was windy and crazy, it's sort of, I love the ocean. I feel really calm on the water and by the water, and then you'd get this sort of this blustery waves and this weather while you're rowing, and then as soon as you finish, like I'd come behind an island, so I'm downwind of it, and I'd be in all the weather, and then I'd go into this really sheltered spot on an island. I found the most sheltered spot I could on an island and stay there, and you come out the wind and it's just, and the water's calm, and you've got the gentle rustling in the trees and the reeds and things like that, some birds calling. And I kind of, a few nights I was thinking, I feel like I'm in one of those videos that people use to like calm them down or make them go to sleep, or background noises that, like bird song or whale noises. It was kind of like that sort of vibe in the evenings, and especially an island all on my own, and it's just stunning, and it's really calm, really nice.
I kind of want to go rowing now.
It makes you want to row?
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Well, I know a good boat.
Thanks for coming in, Amanda.
No worries.
Yeah.